Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, a show trying to make the world safe for ADHD. I'm a clinical psychologist, neuropsychologist, and I'm also the father of a couple of ADHD kids, and I'm married into a whole ADHD family. So I have been surrounded by ADHD for a long time. And one of the things that used to concern me, I guess, is the people who kept talking about autism and ADHD. It seemed to me that they were opposites. That ADHDers were the hyper, can't pay attention, fidgety, running around kind of folks, and autistic folks were the withdrawn, very shy or totally socially inept. That it's like people didn't exist outside of themselves. They could sit there and do nothing for long periods of time. And at the extremes of, they were nonverbal and had to be taught a whole bunch of things about communication and stuff. And then I know what happened in 2013. The APA, in their wisdom, finally allowed dual diagnosis to be made. Before then, you had to have either one or the other. If you diagnosed them with ADHD, you couldn't diagnose them with autism, and then vice versa. And 2013, I have no idea what exactly was going on then, but they said, okay, let's let them go and be dual diagnosed. Thank you. And that was my sound engineer. It's actually my wife. But okay, anyway, so now I understand, and I had to do a bunch of research and that sort of thing to get so I could understand why they would be dual diagnosed, and frankly, why it mattered that they be dual diagnosed. But okay, so first thing we have to recognize is that both ADHD and autism, they have shared genetic pathways, which is just many of the same genes in affect brain development in both conditions. Synaptic function, neurotransmitter regulation, even cortical stimulation. Okay, this means that the same inherited differences can either show up as ADHD or autism or both. So they're in the same areas, the brain, but they're slightly different branches, if you will, of the tree. Okay, and then we go to the brain networks that are actually affected, and they're pretty much the same in both of them. Both of them, executive function stuff is affected, by autism or ADHD, and this is in the front part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's where that's the last part of the brain to fully mature, and it's the part of the brain that is it's the biggie as far as what distinguishes us from lower forms of life on the planet. That's where the reasoning, judgment, problem solving, all that kind of stuff is done. And interestingly, in ADHD people, development in everybody, the prefrontal cortex develops later than everything else. That's why teenagers, they've got all this emotional stuff and everything pretty much under control, but their judgment is terrible. That's why you don't buy your 16-year-old a Corvette right after he gets his license. Judgment is not yet fully developed in any kid, but in ADHDers, it's even slower. Um, and so those networks are affected in both autism and in ADHD. And then we go to, of course, the attention and the part of the brain that evaluates whether it's important, whether what's going on is important. Those are the both overlap in ADHD and autism. And then social attention circuitry, just the ADHDers paying attention to everything. And the autistic kid is probably not paying attention to a whole bunch. Um, just they kind of tune it out. So they're real active, and the autistic is just not doing as well in terms of attention, attending, being able to switch attention, all those sorts of things. But then again, an ADHDers who does a lot of hyper focusing will look kind of the same. Um, you know, so same systems, same networks in ADHD and in autism, just slightly different presentations. And then there's also a lot of shared cognitive and behavioral features in these two different uh, conditions. Uh, Inattention, we already just talked about that, but basically, you know, inattention can be due to distractibility in the ADHD child and just, being socially disengaged as it is in the autistic. And then, well, we have a lot of the executive function deficits are pretty much the same. Um, there's the hyperfocus, which both can have emotional regulation problems, uh, including the tantruming. Both ADHDers and autistic kids uh, have troubles with emotional regulation, and that frequently the one that gets the most attention is the temper tantrums. And then sensory sensitivities, and both can be, having troubles with like the labels and clothes. I can't stand that label. Oh yeah. Oh, or this sheet is so rough, or my cashmere sweater is scratchy, and that sort of thing. And that happens with both times. And then um, ADHDers have difficulty switching. Then they're doing one thing, they don't want to have to switch and do something else. Or if they're used to one way of doing things, they want to have to try a different way. So any kind of change and that sort of thing. But in terms of um, that been applying to the autistic kid, is they also have difficulty shifting, and it's uh, the when you're looking at it from the outside, it looks like it's kind of the same thing. Okay, other things we know, developmental timing. Uh, we know that well, the autistic kids probably get diagnosed earlier than the pure ADHDers, um, especially the ones that are extreme autism. And they both situations are basically you're born with it, and it develops early in child. And to a large extent, some of the stuff you don't see if they're pretty bright. They just kind of shift, or they slide under the diagnostic screen just because they look pretty sharp. And a lot of these diagnoses are very difficult to make, and obviously this changes over time, but it starts real early and it stays with you pretty well for life, basically. And that's one of those things that makes them alike, but also makes them difficult to diagnose. And The reason we're seeing more and more dual diagnosis is that until 2013, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual forbade uh, dual diagnosing. Um, you had to be one or the other, and probably lost us a lot of things, because now you'll see a whole bunch of these dual diagnoses being made, and people who want to, oh well, people are overdiagnosing. I really hate it when people say that all the time. It's just we're getting better and better at recognizing what we've got on hand here, and we can help more people earlier. And but that's the history of it. That's the um, why you never heard of an autistic kid being diagnosed with ADHD or vice versa until fairly recently. It's like once they say it's okay to do it, it doesn't immediately start happening. It takes a few years, uh, especially in the more conservative world of medicine and psychology and so on. People don't want to be leading the parade necessarily. They want to be sure that they're right, and I think that's pretty important. Um, and the So basically, what we've got is that this is a diagnosis that we used a dual diagnosis that we weren't allowed to make until 2013. Now it's starting to be more and more common. And just to kind of go over, okay, the genetics are shared between the two disorders. They affect overlapping brain networks, the um, same kind of brain parts. The development of the same different functions in the brain are the same in both disorders, and the features that they affect, the characteristics that they affect, the behavioral uh, presentations are a lot of times the same, and you can't really be sure which one is doing what. And then they develop roughly the same way. Well, the whole brain always does, but pretty much uh, the judgment centers of the brain are the last ones to fully develop in either disorder. Um, the ADHDers are, and about pure ADHDers are going to get into trouble more for their impulsivity and emotional regulation, and the autistic will be because they're not paying attention to what's going on. They're so focused in, and that sometimes those can look like the same thing. And the they share this a similar presentation or the same presentation. And then, so why the big deal? Why should we be concerned about dual diagnosing? What's so important about that? Well, there are a number of reasons. The biggie is that it's easier if you come in with autism spectrum disorder or you come in with ADHD as a primary presenter. You're a little more likely to get you won't have as much of a chance of getting a misdiagnosis. Okay, people will um, you got two shots, you're more likely uh, to get at least one of them right. So, and the deal with that really is that you can get more services. If anybody's ever had to, uh, go to your child's school and sit in on a child study and all that sort of thing, and try to get accommodations for this, that, or the other. It's easier to do if you've got the both diagnoses down, um, and that's I mean that's really important. It's also easier for the provider um, to not misdiagnose, first of all, but also when he or she's doing their treatment planning, it's easier. Um, if you that's some of this was weird, but why was he doing, or why was she? You can say, oh, that was this diagnosis, and that other thing was this diagnosis, and you got a better chance of, of doing a good treatment plan that'll help everything. And I would say that ADHD is, I think, becoming more normalized, and that's all to the good. Uh, back when I was having young children, it was you just hear about it very often. Oh, there's, oh, he's autistic, that kind of thing. And it was a big stigma, but since then we've, I think, as a well, I don't know. I can't look at the current political situation and say we have gotten more liberal, if you will. Doesn't seem to be, but that's a whole different area. But the deal with having the dual diagnosis reduces the stigma over time, because you're going to see more and more people like this, and you'll be doing more and more of the work of getting people used to it and figuring out what they know and what they don't know. Okay, that's a very varied sort of presentation. Usually I stick pretty much to ADHD stuff, but okay. And a couple of things. I will be, I'll be running right away, right ahead, trying to get this thing done every week. And we still are in the midst of the holiday season. I may do one or two things about that. Um, my website is terrygingrassphd.com. You can go there. Do consider signing up for my newsletter. It's different topics. I don't cover the same one. Well, except for the holiday stuff. That's kind of you have to do that on both of them. But other than that, it's usually a different topic. And right now, I'm doing a bunch of things that well, it's just they'll be different, and they will hopefully be real helpful. And it's written for those of you who do better with written than you do with auditory stuff, um, like me, for instance. But okay, so please sign up for the newsletter, and we will catch you next week, same time. And have a good one, and we will catch you later.